beautiful stars out there. This is Mariah Karina and Arachai Moon, and we are continuing our series of going through the zodiac, kind of dropping into our perspective on what some of the deep essence dynamics are within the archetype. And we've made it to Cancer, which is the fourth sign of the zodiac. We're going to keep it a little bit short and sweet today and just get right to it. But if you do want a longer conversation on Cancer, I highly recommend one of the first podcasts we ever did. It's called Cancer and Conditioned Love. And in that we go fucking deep and unpack all of these different elements of different psychological areas of the dynamics of tribalism, of the egoic nature of Cancer being ruled by the moon. And we're going to touch on some of that stuff today as well. I'm sure there'll be echoes and ripples and things, but I actually just recently went back and listened to that episode, and I think it's really rad. So I super recommend. And for now, I just want to transition and open it up to really talking about Cancer and the fourth house. When me and Arachai were sort of going over this ourselves, we really felt that the heart of the essence dynamic lies in this question of emotional security. And I'd love just to pass it over to you, Arachai, to explain a little bit what you see there.
Yeah, I feel like Cancer is such a crucial part of our developmental stage because it really rules the need for emotional safety and security. And it's that part of our developmental process where I think where our nervous system is really starting to form its attachments and starting to form its bonds and like who we belong to and who we belong with, and realizing ourselves are very separate, but that we have these attachments and these very deep primal needs. And I think that Cancer is such a strong foundation, a foundational piece and a home to those needs and to that experience of tribe and family and am I safe and where is my shelter and like how is that not the physical security that's created inside of Taurus, I think is built upon where it's like we feel physically safe also when we are emotionally held and feel like we belong somewhere. And that is the foundation to being able to discover what our essence is as far as like what our desires are or like our artistic, creative, joyous expressions inside of, Leo is the sign after that. And it's like, you really see it when you see like the little kids that are playing. It's like when they have a mother that they feel really safe and like that base, that foundation is created inside the attachment, and they feel like they can go explore and self-actualize and discover, and then they have like that safe base to come back to. It's like those kids are really able to be more free on the playground and like
move into that Leo.
Yeah, move into that Leo. And not that people that didn't have that secure base aren't, because I do think that there's so much art and expression and drive to find yourself and to find home and connection, like that's birthed inside of not having a home and being birthed in trauma and birthed in a place that feels unsafe and resistant and oppositional. But I also think that those are the two extremes, right? And so where we find the absence of home and connection and safety, like we will need to like really push outside of that and find what our version of home feels like and what our version of like our voice sounds like when it's being shut down. And then the other aspect is like when that's actually a really safe held space and container, then there's something that in hypothetical terms, or in my idealism, is you give that safe space and they're more organically able to just discover who they are and open to who they are instead of needing to shut down or resist and rebel and fight to be who they are, Mm-hmm. And I just feel like so much of that patterning and those deep imprints are made inside of the early stages of our life and specifically the place where the Cancer is ruling. the stage of our development.
I know whenever I see someone with a lot of strong Cancer or a lot of fourth house stuff, it's immediate. I'm like, oh, this is the emotional body coming online. This is persons dealing with all of the themes that you just described: self, other, home, ancestry, tribe, family, and a lot of gender stuff.
Right.
4th and 10th Cancer and Capricorn can imply a lot of gender switching, and a lot of gender complexity and learning is going to be happening for this soul. And in general, just to like boil it down to what feels to me like the core essence at the heart of Cancer, the first line of one of the Upanishads, which is a sacred text in the Hindu religion, is wherever there is an other, fear arises. Wherever we move from this place of feeling in unity to being separate, that's where we constellate both a self and an other. And as soon as there's an other, fear arises. And so that whole Cancer thing seems to be in that interplay between that first kind of realization of, oh, I'm a self and you're an other.
Right.
My partner has this little shorthand trick that you can do to determine if you're in love or fear. And he's saying it's always either you don't love me or I love you. Because inside of you don't love me, and sometimes it's like you don't love me, and sometimes like you don't love me, and sometimes it's like you don't love me. Every once in a while, we're actually connected with I don't love you. But I think normally we're in that victim place of feeling like you don't love me.
Right.
And we don't realize that these things that are coming out of our victim experience are actually aggressive expressions of I don't love you.
Right. And rejection.
Yes.
It's like they're feeling rejected and pushing away, but there is a deep rejection going on inside of the person for that.
Exactly. Yes. It's like you abandoned me, you don't love me. But what do I do when I feel abandoned? I push, I reject, I give you a million signals that I don't love you in that moment. And so...
Or it externalizes and tries to give the care that it's like really deeply wanting and abandons itself, right?
Which is the other place I was going to go to, which is a core Cancer dynamic.
Right.
I think
Absolutely.
One of the main things Cancers will do is they give the love that they want to receive. And that as someone...
And it's so sad. If you love a Cancer, you got to pay attention because they will be giving it to you. They will be asking you how you're doing and caretaking you exactly the way that they want that like mirror to come back. And it can feel so good the way those Cancers like can take care and nourish.
And I think it's a little tricky because obviously I'm someone with a lot of Cancer, and it feels really great to be giving and to see the love being received and being nourished. But I do think it crosses this line, this very elusive line where it's time for the reciprocity to come back around. And the love that I thought I was giving, I thought maybe, and this is, especially when I was younger and I was less aware of this, I thought I was also modeling how I wanted to be loved. But instead it's like the person would, be so in the receiving that they would lose track maybe of like where that reciprocity line was, or they would love me in their natural way. And even Jason Hawley says Cancers can have like a very particular love shape. Like there's literally like a shape in the heart that they want the love to plug into. And it looks like, this very complicated jigsaw piece. And if it's not the exact right jigsaw piece in the exact right place of the puzzle where it's supposed to go, it doesn't feel like love and it doesn't feel like enough. And then I do think Cancer can get very resentful and keep trying to give and keep trying to model and keep trying to say it's okay, all the while othering more and more and feeling less and less loved, feeling more and more separate, creating more and more separation, more stories, more projections.
And it can be such a huge, like such a deep place of grieving and so much pain and like you're saying resentment, because I love that you're speaking to that polarity. Like we can be the polarity that we're actually wanting somebody else to be so that we can flip and receive it. And yet actually embodying that polarity causes the other to go into the other form, what is the word, like when you polarize,
Oh,
right? And so if I'm in my masculine and I'm giving in this certain way, but I'm not creating the space for the actual like dynamic that I'm longing for to happen, to flip back over, then it creates this polarized experience in the field that everyone is that other character for them. And so that part remains untouched, and it kind of reminds me of the place where it's like when we have to vibrate and magnetize like what we want in order to manifest and attract it, because if we're just sending it out and looking for it or giving and being the opposite of it, then it's the universe will just like play those other roles for us.
Totally.
And this is where the roles I think are created, is inside of Cancer.
Oh, how so?
I just think that the way that we develop like needing to feel secure and get our needs met, and the coping mechanisms, the roles, like imagine like the little kids, like if I do it this way, then daddy does this, mommy does this, like this, you know, this world constitutes, you know, these different roles around me, these fractal realities around me. And then it's like right before the Leo, when you then start to play with like, if I do this in my essence, then the world receives me this way and gives me back that feedback loop of acceptance and validity and worthiness and all that adoration, all that fire we're looking for in Leo. And so I think that in Cancer is where we start to maybe in a subconscious way, but really start to track the ways that that we need to be, what role we need to play, and how we need to give and receive in order to get what we want. And some of those imprints made in childhood are not the most effective. They're oftentimes very sabotaging. They're oftentimes based in family systems that have been extremely toxic. And, you know, so it carries on into our adult life. And that's how we play out these roles and these patterns with our relationships.
And Cancer is the first water sign of the zodiac. It is the emotional body coming online, and emotions are not easy. No one teaches us about this shit. I think even still we are in our infancy of even understanding how to navigate the dimension of reality that is emotions at all.
Right.
And so I think it's really intense, right? Like imagine to first experience, oh, I have a self. And I have all of these feelings. Like I think there can be that feeling in Cancer. Part of the impetus for its emotional management systems that it creates is because the experience of emotions is flooding and is overwhelming. So it's like, oh my God, I have all these feelings that there's barely any language for. You know, it's like the average person from the United States can name 4 feelings: happy, sad, angry, and then pissed. You know?
Oh my God.
And so it's like, what the fuck am I feeling? And then it's like, and then what do I do with this? And then that's when I think we start looking around for who's my people. And so, oh, this is my family. This is my partner. This is my children. This is my tribe. This is my ancestral lineage. Because something about that relational context gives us a feeling that we're not alone in it. Gives us a feeling like there are those people who can hold this with me, be with me in this. But then we realize, oh, maybe they're not, you know? So first I think there's the other, like,
maybe
there's
they
like,
can be taken.
Not my tribe, you know? Yes. And then that's a whole other thing. But then I think it's like, as soon as there's another fear arises. So the whole thing is just plagued with like an immense amount of doubt. And like you said about, like finding the emotional security, I think it really implies this need to be able to dive in, to lean in to the actual experience that you're having. And in evolutionary astrology, our lineage, they say that real evolution happens through the water signs, that it's Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, heart, soul, spirit. That Cancer is the heart. It's our first most immediate emotional experience, then Scorpio, soul, then Pisces, spirit. But the reason why it has to happen there is because there's something, and I see this all the time in counseling, it's like people will know all this stuff intellectually. But if the real reconfiguring, the real rewiring if it's not happening in the emotional body, then it's not happening.
Absolutely. And I really feel this. I just wrote this on, I just made a meme today about no matter how much intellect, no matter how much psychological, spiritual power and intellect that we actually obtain, if we're not rooted in the heart, and if it's not able to actually imprint our nervous system and therefore our hormonal, chemical, physiological responses, and really root into the way that we live our lives, especially around our attachments, because I've really been observing just so many brilliant, absolutely talented, spiritually, not just thinking it spiritually, but just really deeply connected people. And yet when you get close in the deep inner gates where their relationships and their deep places of attachment and therefore shame and insecurity, and I know you said it's something like, oh, that's a whole nother thing when I said, and it can be taken, but it's really like there's something about that survival instinct of the Taurus nature of like, we need these physical things in order to survive, and how much that triggers us to do and to prostitute ourselves or to hoard and all of the things that the fear of that survival, extract from the earth until there's, until we're literally threatening the survival of our entire species. It's like all of these kind of insane reactions will be inspired. A chain reaction will happen if our survival is triggered. And I think in Cancer, we have the survival of the tribe, the survival of the other, the survival of like our nervous system, our emotional security, our emotional needs are so important that it means survival. And so when we feel the people that trigger that in us, that trigger that desire, that we finally open to, it's like that's where all shit seems to get crazy. It's like people, they can have so much awareness and choose love and choose to be so sensitive and integrous and aware in so many ways. And then as soon as they get into those deep gates, it's like, whoa, some pretty intense, raunchy things start coming up. Because like they will fight for power over connection, even though connection is like what they're so deeply desiring. And that's what I find so fascinating about the imprints inside of our nervous system, and like the way that we then create these attachments and these roles with each other, and how that hinders us from being able to actually bring ourselves forward and be in our heart. Because if we're actually in our hearts and open in that and being vulnerable and actually working towards connection, then so many of these other sabotaging, isolating, degrading, narcissistic patterns will subside. Like there will be a pathway through. But because the trauma inside of the nervous system and the inability to actually open the heart has not been cultivated inside of our society, I feel like it's so scary. It's like jumping off this ledge into the abyss of the ocean of all the emotions, that feels so overwhelming to people.
And I think what I mean by trying to bring in this aspect, because the moon is also the ego, right? It's the unconscious. It's the invisible structures inside us. It's our own sort of cycles of things. And I think, like you're saying, people will choose power over connection because it does feel like life or death.
Yeah.
Like that is, I think that egoic impulse is to defend as opposed to be shredded. And
sharing an equal power and finding that pathway.
Right. Well, that's ideal, but but I think
And
in
like
the
I said,
moment,
finding the pathway.
I think in the moment though, where you're fighting for something that feels really important to you, right? Like it's like, no, you are abandoning me, and the person's like, I'm abandoning you because I'm doing something that's really important for me, and you need to love me in that. You know, if you love me, you love my commitment to my art, and the person's like, but
there has to be a form of detachment.
You have to be willing to to surrender, actually, and to let it go. Like let what you're fighting for, let the thing that might be the deepest desire of your ego, let the thing that might feel like you're going to lose your entire life go. And that's why it's
your purpose, your life, all of your safety nets.
Your whole self-image. It's a lot. And that's why I do think it's like the other thing they say in evolutionary astrology is that in every moment we have two cross streams of desire, and one is to unite and one is to separate. And I think a lot of time desires are like that. Like they're contradictory and opposites simultaneously.
Right.
Like I both have a desire to completely devote myself to my art and to do anything but art. I both have a desire for absolute partnership and to keep playing the field.
Same with safety and freedom.
Same with connection and power.
Absolutely.
And so on the one hand, it's like there's so this is what I mean. It's like I think
this is the
love,
crucible of Cancer.
Yes, and the crucible of like the emotional evolution of being embodied in human form, I think, is that love and fear arise in the same moment. And the desire for connection and the desire for separation arise in the same moment. And it's wild because the answer to the fear and doubt of you don't love me is to find that place of feeling like I love you.
And also taking personal authorship, because I feel like
which is that Capricorn polarity.
Exactly. And so where you find the, like what you're saying, the connection and power polarity, the freedom and security is found inside of that cardinal cross, you know, like the Aries freedom, the Cancer home and safety, security. The Libra is like the relationships, the interwebs of the relationships. And then the Capricorn is that personal responsibility, do the duty and the responsibility, be the author of your own life. And then how does that then feed the generations before and after?
Yes, and that's what I think what I was saying about Cancer, because so much of it is about coming home to yourself and actually being able to have a container that can hold all of your water. Like, look at the ocean. There's not one ocean. There are a million oceans. There's soft ocean, hard waves like up in the north that will just slam you down. There's vicious ocean. There's electric blue water, Caribbean ocean. There's a million faces, and I feel like there's something about coming home to the emotional body.
To any one of her,
it will change. It will. That is the only constant. And like for me, in terms of having to really nurture and nourish and come to know my own Cancer fourth house self, has been about, can I create an alchemical vessel that can hold all my different water? Because the desire for security is just as strong as the desire for danger and risk and adventure. Like even Esther Perel in her book, Mating for Captivity, she says, in our relationships, there are these two forces constantly at work: our desire for closeness, security, coziness, intimacy, and our desire for separation, for not knowing where we stand, for, distance, right? And we can pretend we're just one and let the other creep in sideways, which is a very Cancer thing, to come at shit sideways. Or we can be like, no, I'm in this phase, now I'm in this phase, and pendulum back and forth. But I think there's a tantric possibility that happens when we're able to understand that home is opposites, that truth is multiple, that truth is paradoxical.
Absolutely.
And can we create a home for all of our humanness, for all of our juxtaposition, and feel that is safety.
Right. And it's like
truth is safety, and truth is multiple.
And you can, and know that you can handle it. Like create the space, like you're saying, knowing that I can invite somebody to give me what I want and like rapture me, or go into this deep place where I can rapture them, or do whatever it is that it's like the Cancer desires to be in that symbiotic relationship. But it's like, can you simultaneously hold your Capricorn there? Can you hold that part of the elder, that part that can contain you, that can trust that even if they take you so deep and abandon you, that you got yourself and that you chose to go there, you know, instead of getting victimized in our own desires, getting victimized by our own needs, and then abandoning ourselves and projecting it onto the other's incompetence or whatever they decide to do. Because face it, like, we're flailing as humans. We can't rely.
No one knows what's going on.
We
y'all.
can't rely.
No one knows.
On freaking humans to be able to hold epic space and containers. I mean, I strive to be able to do that, but ultimately,
safety is not out there. Safety is inside.
Yeah. And we can have standards and boundaries and requests around that, but to really...
And should.
Yes. But to really, really choose to take ourselves into those places and know it's just kind of like in an ayahuasca ceremony. It's like you can pick a really good shaman and you can try to make sure that you did the diet and you can really get a good crew of people and you feel really safe and all that. But like when it gets down to it, it's you and it's her, you know? And it's like, you guys got to hold it together. because everyone's else got their own shit. and like that expansion inside of the containment and that responsibility, I think, is like such a really powerful lesson of Cancer. To really be able to expand and to go into the depths of intimacy, to go into the depths of oneself and know that it's not always about the other. Like, we're going into those depths because we want to know ourselves. And that portal of the other person inspired that. But when they disappear, we have to be able to hold ourselves inside of that.
The classic archetype, this is my last thought. The classic archetype of Cancer is the mother. And I just think that's the most perfect representation. Like a mother is pregnant or a parent is pregnant with a baby. Like, you are of the same body. And then the baby is born and you are separate. And the baby lives its whole life. And just that dance of self, of other, of separation, of unity. And to me, like the real impetus of the Cancer, which is to be able to be in that evolutionary intention, the learning process of holding that, like you're saying, without losing your shit, of holding the fact that we are one, we are one body, but we are separate, but I love you, but I support you, but I have my own life, like all the dynamics in that dance.
And that to me is like what truly, like being devoted to that dance right there of like flesh and spirit, mother, child, the individual and togetherness, union and separation, that ebb and flow between those spaces and how we really deal with that, how we navigate it, is how I feel like we heal our nervous systems and we work on our attachment styles. Is like, how good can we come together and collaborate and be open and meet each other in presence and not be like projecting and trying to get all of our needs met indirectly and going into illusions about, who they are, who we want them to be, and who we are in the eyes of them, and all of these things that sometimes get us so wrapped up and unable to see the person truly before us, and with us. And really feel that like connection. And then like, how is it when, how is our bandwidth when we're inside of these experiences that might trigger our attachments, trigger our desires, trigger our needs, trigger our fears to lose them, trigger our jealousy, whatever it is. how do we work with that ebb and flow of attachment and detachment, separation and union? And that's where I think that maturity is really found between Cancer and Capricorn.
So those are just a few of our thoughts. I love doing this podcast with you. I hope y'all are enjoying it out there, and we'll see you next week.